Tobin Mueller, World Trade Center, 9/11. Folks, I interviewed Tobin in Brooklyn, New York. It was August the 25th, 2011 when I interviewed all the other survivors. 22 of them total that week in Elizabeth, New Jersey and Brooklyn, New York. And it was making history. I'll tell you what, it was amazing, the stories that we heard. I'm sharing some of those with you on my YouTube channel because I feel it's time. All these I was going to say veterans, they are veterans of war, really, with what they went through, but all of these survivors are featured in my documentary, 9/11 Remembered, A Day of Infamy. I've got the complete 2.5-hour film on my playlist that I'm sending people. It's on every description of my video and every comment section. You can find the playlist. I've got the part 1, 2, and 3 of the video, of the documentary, and I've got a special 1-hour edited version for schools of the video. So they're all getting a lot of play. A lot of people are interested in these stories. I know the gals I just released, Bonnie and Lorna, and I have many more to release. I don't think I'll get them all before Thursday, which will be the 11th of September. But Tobin is a playwright, a composer, a musician. He plays piano. He plays other instruments. Showed me some pictures. I think he played a clarinet a long time ago. It was very small. Guitar, maybe, if I saw in the pictures. But just very talented and just a wonderful man. Met him and his wife Suzanne in, like I said, Brooklyn. And we had a great time there. And Tobin has a song that he wrote called "Was There Once a Time?" And I'm going to play that some of that song, an edited version of that, over some pictures after this introduction. So I hope you hear that. It's in the documentary too. Was There Once a Time? It's a beautiful song, Tobin. But Tobin was living across from the Twin Towers on the morning of September 11th. He went to bed late, got up late. Actually, was woke up when the first plane hit the Tower 1, the North Tower. And he talked about the fireball that he saw. He wasn't watching TV. He was seeing this in real time. So his perception of it was different than what we see on TV. And I like the fact that he did. But he saw it, he heard it, and we described it. And just a great interview, another gripping story. Went down on the streets and helped volunteer with food and other things. And just did a great job with that. Tobin, I'm glad to feature your story here so you can share all of what you told me 14 years ago about the volunteers and the volunteer work that was done. So important behind the scenes that went on that a lot of people don't see. I covered some of it in my documentary last year called The Recovery effort, and so it's in that. But Tobin, I'm just so happy to be able to share your story. Excited. Folks, that's about it for now. I want to thank you for subscribing to this channel, and it's been a blessing working with, like I said, these survivors, and I'm happy to share their stories. Every one of them. I love them all. Lost 3 of them, like I told you last time. I've lost 3 of the 22, but I think you're going to enjoy Tobin Mueller. He's a special, I almost said different, but he's a special guy. He's suffered from the health problems like a lot of those who were exposed to the particles, the dust, the air. He's had lung problems since September 11, 2001, and he'll talk about it in this interview. And I hope you're doing okay today, Tobin. Hope to see you again soon, and God bless you and your wife and your family. And we're going to honor you now with this story. So thank you, folks, again for watching, listening, sharing these videos. So important. This story will go on my Voices of History radio channel after it airs here also. And I know many thousands of people will see your story, Tobin. And God bless you, and God bless all those that are going to watch this.
Was there once a time when the world was young and unafraid, when we sang of wondrous dreams and were proud of all we made? Was there once a time when the world was wide and true and real, when each word was fresh and free, and each life was held and healed? Was there once a time when the song came lightly to my lips, and the music danced and played in a kind of trance kinship? Once upon that time, if the world breathed heavy on my back, I could find the strength to sing. I would find a right lyric.
First question, I thought about what am I going to ask everybody? The first question, and I've asked everybody this question since Sunday. The best you can remember, where were you on the night before September 11th? Were you in Connecticut, around here?
No, I lived in the city. I was living in the city, and every night before I went to sleep, because I had a really great view of the Twin Towers, so I could lay in my bed, and right between my feet were the Twin Towers. So I would see the twinkling lights and imagine the people working there. I actually did PowerPoint for people that worked there, and so I would imagine those things. The night before, I got in very late. I had a rehearsal, and we kind of goofed around afterwards. So I probably went to sleep about 4 a.m., which is unusual. Which was really usual for me to be up that late. And when the first plane hit, it woke me up. So I was actually asleep, but I didn't know that's what it was. And I looked around and I thought that something had happened, but I really hadn't heard anything. And then I looked out past my toes and I saw an amazing amount of smoke. And went to the window, and when you're that close, it looked completely different than on television, which I didn't turn on. Because you could see the flames. The flames were 3, 4, 5 stories high behind the windows. And the smoke wasn't thick black like it was, but it was pouring out. But it was the amount of flame that stunned me. And so I made a phone call right away to the woman that I did PowerPoint for, who I couldn't remember now what building it is when I'm looking at them. She was actually in the other building, and she answered the phone. And she said, "I'm getting my people out." And I said, "Do you know what's happening? Can you look through the window?" And she said, "I have no idea what's happening, but I'm getting my whole team downstairs." And while she was on her cell phone, I could hear in the back that they were telling everyone not to leave and to stay at their desks, and that it's confined to building 2, and building 1 should just stay where they are. If she hadn't have gone down, they would all have been killed, because they were on the 72nd floor. When they got down, then that was right when the other plane hit, and it just rained down on them, and they had to slide underneath the cars. So actually, I couldn't tear myself away from, after we hung up with her, I called my father in Wisconsin, who I knew would be up watching morning television. And he actually didn't have it on. He turned it on because I couldn't leave the window. And he had no idea what was going on. He said that they think a small plane ran into accidentally, or there was some problem. And while I was talking to him, the second plane hit. And it was a 60-story fireball that came at me. And it was astounding, and I couldn't speak. And so I just said, I have to call you up, and turn the phone off. And I think I couldn't hardly make any phone calls after that, because then my phone went dead.
So you were on the phone, and the second plane hits the second tower.
That's right. Yeah.
In a direction where it looks like it's coming right at you.
Right. It was I'm close enough so that I didn't see a plane. I just saw this explosion. To me, it looked like a giant. I couldn't imagine how much explosives would have caused such a thing, and so I had to leave the apartment. And I went down, and I went to the park, Stuyvesant Park, right there, and people were watching the flames and the smoke in disbelief, and no one was talking to each other. There was one older Asian man doing Tai Chi, completely unaffected by anything. And the rest of us were really separate people watching. And we watched, and I went back in the apartment to get my camera and came back out, and I just started taking some pictures when the first of the buildings started to fall. And the person I know standing right next to me fell to the earth, and you could hear this noise that came from everyone, this sound. And then it hit, and then you heard the rumble go through the subway. And we couldn't believe it. We were so close that if the building was standing this tall, when it got down about that far, you couldn't tell that it fell any further, because there was so much of the gray dust smoke that came up. And so I thought it couldn't have fallen. It just couldn't have fallen. And didn't take any more pictures. And looked around, and then this one black fellow walked through the park and yelled, "The white man's world is coming down." And people turned to him and yelled, "Fuck you!" And it was like this moment where, because everyone was like half dead. There's this whole, you couldn't imagine how many people were dying right now, and we'd lost, worse than getting hit by the Force, with Obi-Wan. And this guy coming at everyone and yelling back at him was this wonderful New York moment. So you felt like, okay, now I'm alive. But then, people started wandering and walking, and I moved so that I could see if the whole building had fallen. But then when people started coming, they don't really get that area. And once they get into the village, they're totally lost. And so I spent the next few hours, even after the next building fell, just directing people and helping people so they would know where to go. And through the grapevine, you kind of knew where people could go to get water, where people could go to this. Mostly it would be people who were coming up to me because I was obviously directing people around, and would ask me, usually in broken English, where PS4 is, or because my kid is there. And they actually couldn't find it because the streets are difficult there. So that's really what I did. There were lots of people, 30, 40 people around, a car here and there that would have a radio going. Most people were walking around with dead cell phones on their ears and talking to no one. And there was a lineup over a block long to get to the payphone, because the payphones, even though there's hardly any left, the payphone still worked. So that's how people were. And I remember actually walking by and someone getting a hold of somebody and hearing that fabulous sound of happy tears, and it affected the 20 people behind them, that they all had hope, where everyone looked like zombies beforehand.
So you just said a lot in a short amount of time. Let's break it. Let me go back for a minute, okay?
Okay.
You're waking up by what was the first plane hitting the towers.
That's
so
right.
You're probably going, what was that?
Right.
I mean, did you ever think, well, you thought it might be an accident, but after that second plane hit, did you have the thought, we're being attacked, man? Or is this a movie? Is this surreal? What's going on, man?
I didn't have the thought of being attacked, because I know that there have been other terrorist attempts at trying to bring that down the towers, but until the fighters started flying overhead, then that worried me, the idea of actually something more coordinated and right around the corner. But right at that moment, when I thought for sure it was set explosives, and it must have been within several, because it was a 60-story by 40-story fireball that came out. That I just thought it had to have even been more than one bomb. That I thought for sure bombs had been set. I never once felt like there was another area around the city unless it happened. In fact, when the rumors started going around on the street that the Pentagon had been attacked, I didn't believe it. I thought it was hysteria. And I actually didn't find out till, maybe 6 hours later, because I couldn't be inside. I really couldn't be inside. I couldn't go back into my apartment. I just had to help. I had to do things.
But did you know it was a plane?
I actually am not sure when I learned that it was a plane, but my son was working at the W Hotel at the time, and he saw the first plane come down Fifth Avenue. And so when he came home, he told me that it was a plane that even though right then it was still supposed to be a smallish plane, and then the second plane was an actual airliner. He said the first plane was an airliner, and so he saw it go right down, and he said that seems awfully low. So.
How about, when you went down on the street, did you see any of the fire personnel, EMTs? Did you see the rescue operation starting, or were you aware of all
that? That first day, I wasn't aware of anything official happening. It just was the wave of gray, dusted people coming back, and then the crush of people from the city trying to find someone. Trying to find someone at Stuyvesant. Stuyvesant was turned into a triage unit, and even that, even though there were EMT people and there were firemen, there were so many people that had no uniforms on that everything to me that first while seemed to be organized in an ad hoc volunteer citizen kind of thing. So then I had heard that you could give blood, and I imagined that there would be tons of casualties. So I went to St. Vincent's to stand in line, and that was really where I relaxed for the first time. And you stand in line, and the line's not moving, and this is before the pictures were put up. This is when people were just showing up, saying, "You were down there. Did you see this person?" And they came with the pictures already, and this was already in late afternoon. Did you see this person walking by? So there was person after person coming down the line of people waiting to give blood, asking if they saw these people. And that's one of the reasons why on that wall, that's where all of the pictures were first put up, because that's where everybody was standing in line to give blood. But that only happened the first day, because they got so much blood, I didn't even give any. When I got toward getting inside, they said everyone has to leave because we have enough blood. So then I think that I continued through the night helping people out and doing things. And I slept badly. And I turned on Channel 1 to see what was happening this next day. Channel 1 said all the places you could go to volunteer. And one of them was Chelsea Piers to the hockey rink. That's where they're going to bring body parts and corpses. And I thought, well, that's where the least amount of people are going to go to volunteer. So that's where I went. So it was really early morning. It was 6 o'clock or something. I went down there, and they turned me away. They said, there are no body parts, there are no people. By this time, from Chelsea Piers at 17th Street, all the way back down 17th and all the way on the West Side Highway, were ambulances. They were lined up, 50 one way, 100 the other way. And so while I walked back, I saw that there was a small white mobile home set up right there. And outside was one table with one plate of donuts and 2 coffee makers. And a fellow was running inside with a walkie-talkie, big old style walkie-talkie. He was going back and forth trying to get coffee to the people who would come and trying to communicate and then doing something inside. And I said, "You want me to handle the donuts? I can handle the donuts. There isn't a chair or anything. There's just this little table." And so that's how it started. That's what my effort started, was early in the morning, because I was rejected from Chelsea Pier's morgue. I said, well, you know, I could do this. So somebody else who was rejected, someone else just like me who was rejected, walking alone back to their apartment, I said, by the way, do you help me with these donuts? We could take them to the guys so that they don't have to get out of their ambulances while they're close to the front of the line and then come and get it. And it would be more efficient. So we'll take turns. So that's what we did. Then somebody else showed up. Within an hour, there were 12 people doing this. And we already began to differentiate. Someone said, you know, we could actually get food, and they went to Beluga's to try to get food, and then we got more coffee. And then all of a sudden somebody comes with another table. And Beluga gave us a whole bunch of coffee makers. And then someone said, let's get some cold cuts. You know, nothing was happening. You have to understand, for the next, you know, you couldn't really go in or out of the city. So if you had a deli, no one was buying anything, no one was doing anything, you might as well do this, and everyone wanted to help. Within 2 hours, we had 2 tables of people making food. And a whole, we were feeding all of the people there. But we just happened to be right at as far as you could go and not have to get past the police. So they really didn't want people to go past there. You had to show your ID. Actually, for weeks, you had to show your ID to get in close enough, just prove that you lived there. So people were coming there saying, I heard on TV that they need socks, that they need boots. So I said, well, good, let's let them here. So we'll see what we can do. They couldn't go any farther. So we started piling up, really haphazardly, all the clothes. And then we realized we had enough clothes, and now I had about 20 people. And I was the coordinator, because I was the first one who was there. So I said, why don't you guys organize the clothes? We can at least get socks in one and shirts in another. And by night, we had male and female piles, and we had everything by sizes. And we had so much space, I asked the police if they could actually go onto the street and mark with police tape a larger area for us. And things were piling up so that you could actually see them over the fencing structure from the water. And a water patrol police came and yelled up, do you have any boots? It's so hot that they're melting. They need more boots already. And I said, sure. Can you come up? You know, so he came up and he saw what we had. And he also told us things that they might need, that they needed better gas masks, that they had just these little flimsy things, and they needed aerators. And I thought, oh, that's I'll ask the next time I find. So we filled up his boat, and he took it around back. I actually went with him because he came back. I went with him toward the end of that night. And it just so happened that somebody's cell phone worked of the 20 or 30 people that were with me at this point. And I said, they really need the masks with the aerators. He said, oh, that's great. I know someone at 3M. And I tell you, in an hour later, a large truck showed up full of masks, exactly what they needed. So now all of a sudden we have all these masks that they're filling up outside. And then we begin getting regular runs. And then that's when I actually went down to ground zero for the first time, because we went all the way around the back. And that was stunning to me. When we came around the back and docked, there were already, this is the next day, there were already what seemed to be about 500 off-duty now firemen. But there was at least 8 inches, and sometimes higher, of dust everywhere. So they're standing around moving as little as possible because the dust would swirl all around. Very few of them had their masks on their heads. They're all on their foreheads. And by the way, whenever I cough, I think of that time. And I thought, this is crazy. I had about 3 guys with me who were from the effort that I had started over there. And And they said, well, we have to get someplace for them to sit. They couldn't even sit. They couldn't sit on steps because there's dust everywhere. So we actually broke into the Marriott Hotel there because we said, there's stuff right there, the glass is broken. They couldn't finish breaking the glass and go and get the stuff because they were a fireman, and that they said, we can't do that. So we did it for them. So after it was broken, then everybody came and we stole all the furniture. And that's actually what we ended up doing, was breaking all of those windows all around so that they were like little restaurants, and we made them shops. So throughout the next few days, there was a place for drugs, antibiotics, and aspirin and stuff. There was a place for things to drink. There was a place for food, a place for pickaxes. We actually created a strip mall there. And it was the next night that it started raining. And we asked because we were all outside, and we asked the night watchman of Chelsea Piers if we could save this material, all the stuff we had. That was now a half a block square. If we could get it inside so that at least it wouldn't get wet. And that's how we moved into Chelsea Piers, and we took over the Chelsea Piers parking lot, which is the size of 3 or 4 basketball courts. And by the end of that day, I had about 200 people working under me. And it was like a Target where you could walk around and everything was organized, and we had it all inventoried. So when someone came in and asked for something, we could show them what they were. And my only rule was that because of the big hole that you have inside of you that is hard to describe, and this nervous energy, you don't want to close your eyes, let alone sleep, that I didn't want to turn anyone away. That moment when I was turned away at Chelsea Piers, I felt so lost. What am I going to do in that 100 feet of walking and stumbling upon this one table? I didn't want anyone else to feel that. So my job was really to take the new people and tell them what to do next. And what we were doing kept expanding and expanding. We were supplying them things that none of the other relief efforts had yet, because I had direct access to the television, because I could walk down the block, actually about 4 blocks away, to St. Vincent's and get on TV and say, this is what they've told us they need, because we had direct access to the guys. Even though much closer was what called Tent Village, what was built up around them, they had water. And after the first day, those guys would not drink water anymore. And so they had Coke. We even had beer and stuff, because they just couldn't stomach, and they needed caffeine. So somebody came up to me and said, you need someone to watch out for this food, even though we're kind of keeping track of it. We're using mayonnaise, we're using some things. And I work for Spirit Lines, and I would like to be in charge of your food. And I said, fabulous. So I said, go and recruit some people and get this. So those the next recruits all went with him, and he not only organized the food so that it was safer, but then the day after, he was able to get in touch with someone who was running Spirit Lines so that we could get warm food to the guys. So that effort came out of our effort, because Spirit Lines was just in the next space down, right on Chelsea Piers. And I know a lot of actresses, and I thought, wouldn't it be great if a pretty actress were the ones that brings them the food? So I used someone's phone, mine still didn't work, and I called one, just one, and 5 or 6 girls show up. And so they not only got on the Spirit Lines to come around and dock behind there and to give them warm food, but they put on a show. So they sang for them, which I hadn't even thought of. And that was one of the things. Whenever I would ask somebody to do a little thing, they went so much farther and they did so much more. My son and I would see each other in passing, and he was still at the W Hotel, and he knew that they had 3 floors of empty rooms that they had organized. They had moved everybody so that they had complete 3 floors for the EMT people to use whenever they needed to. And we started getting people who were walking up from downtown that couldn't get back in their apartments at all. whether they were wrecked or whether they were quarantined. And, and so I said, well, I think I have somebody who has a telephone that works. So I've got one of the new guys who had a telephone that worked. And I said, call my son at the W and here's the number. And this is all I did. This is an example of things. This is all I did to set it up. And I came back 3 hours later. They had stolen 2 more tables. There were people working all around the table. They had paper filled up lists of people that they were finding spaces for in hotels all around the city. So that one suggestion then turned into, we were the best place to find something to come and do. So this is whatever started, it just exploded like that. So we really had a fabulous operation. I know when Suzanne came to visit to me on Saturday or Sunday, I probably hardly had slept. I looked like a crazy man. I felt very calm. By the way, I didn't feel like I looked crazy. And she was astounded. Just when I would drag her around to show her what we've done, it must have taken 20 minutes just to give you a tour, because we no longer even were just in that one place. We had taken over offices also of Chelsea Piers, which was very nice of them, by the way. Very nice of them. So at the end of the week, it was rumored that FEMA was considering closing our operation. And I think it was Sunday morning. And so we contacted, and actually someone went running, but we also tried to phone Giuliani's office. And they got in, through the phone they said, we want you to stay going until we have the Javits Center up and running, which was open, but it's also far away and it wasn't running. And they had a special car come with an escort, and the FEMA people were there. And they were kind of skirmishing and discussing. And I was walking through my crew, and Suzanne had gone for a walk, and I didn't know it. I turned around and she wasn't there. You know, there's hundreds of people doing things. And so I start calling, Suzanne, Suzanne, and all of a sudden this very large person who looks like a bodyguard puts his hand on my shoulder and says, Suzanne's not coming back. And I said, no, you don't get it. She's from Connecticut. She's just visiting me. She's my girlfriend, but we weren't married yet. So we got married after that. And then somebody else shows up on my other side, and I feel like I'm being mugged. And they said, we have a psychiatrist upstairs we would like you to see. And I said, I don't need a psychiatrist. I'm sure as calm as I could be. No, I don't need a psychiatrist. Suzanne is not a figment of my imagination. She's not a ghost. She was right there. She just went for a walk. I'm just, and they don't pick me up, but they hold me in such a way that I say, okay, I'll try, I'll talk to this person, and maybe they'll let me go. So I went upstairs in this tiny little room, and a psychiatrist indeed is there and starts trying to help me. What I didn't realize was every one of my coordinators that I had under me, the same thing was happening at the same time. FEMA came in with a bunch of goons, and they took everybody who was in charge and they put them in rooms. And they got rid of everyone. And they locked all the doors so that when we came down, we couldn't get in anymore. And I said, at least let me talk to somebody in charge, because they really wanted me to get on the street and leave. While Giuliani's people were still yelling to try to keep us going. And so I talked to the person and I said, look, we have an astounding amount of stuff, and it's stuff that they really, really need, and it's all inventoried and organized. At least I had the clipboard, because I at least went and salvaged the clipboards. And it's all here, it's all organized. And they said, oh, that's fine, and pushed it away. And I said, no, at least take this so that when you finally go in there and do it. And he took it, and I'm sure threw it away. And our entire organization, everything that we had, stayed locked up for at least 2 weeks. And then it was eventually moved to the Javits Center. But the effort that at least the guys on the pile, they started calling the Home Depot, and they considered to be the best effort to get to them what they wanted, was something that grew up organically. And And everybody, there were people, and only about a third of the people were New Yorkers who were working with me. There were a third who were from New Jersey and close by, and a third that were people from Florida and Ohio, and someone from Texas. They must have flown in and somehow walked over a bridge to come and be there to help out. It was just astounding. You know, you grow up. I was kind of a political animal when I was a young man, and philosophical, and had imagined a perfect society. And for 1 week, we had a perfect society. And everyone behaved perfectly. This was really what it was to be a human being. And even though for a moment you wanted to feel proud, you couldn't feel proud. There's too much loss. But I feel proud now. It was a fabulous thing. And in contrast, when I turned on the TV and saw that FEMA got to New Orleans so fast, I thought they were doomed. That they needed to stay away and let the people do something. Because they would have done great things too, but they didn't have the chance to.
When you saw, I'm going to go back for a minute. When the towers came down, describe that event and where you were. Just slow that event down. Did you see that? Did you feel it? Did you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd mentioned it.
Yeah.
It was at the park that was right near there, and I was actually going to take a picture because I'm kind of an amateur photographer.
Describe the scene a little more to me. I mean,
there were about, I would say, between 14 and 24 people. So there's a lot of separate people. I was standing next to my son, and maybe 2 other people were standing next to friends, but otherwise everyone was separate, and no one was talking. The only one who was moving was the older Asian man who was doing Tai Chi, who did not stop moving even when it fell. It was as if it didn't happen for him. And you're speculating, so you're standing there watching this happening, and you're wondering how many people can get out, and what can the people on top be, and can they come with helicopters, and if you're saying anything, that's what you're saying. Most people are saying nothing. That's what I'm thinking in my head. I actually can't remember saying hardly anything to my son, and we talk a lot. So we were just watching, and then I went to frame it in the picture, and I took a picture almost exactly when it started to fall. And I think I got and realized what was happening through the camera, and then I stopped and didn't drop the camera and made a noise. And I realized everyone else made the same sound, and you heard this sound echo in this little courtyardy kind of park. And 2 people fell to their knees. I'm sure not even knowing that they were on their knees. Because at that moment, we were certain 30,000 people had died, even though not even a tenth of that died. We had no idea the Herculean effort that was going on, being 8 blocks removed, of getting people out of there. We had no idea. So that was awful. It was just awful. There's no words. Did
you see firemen at all?
From where we were, no. It was, like I said before, what happened was that when we moved then toward the street, it was really just people coming in this direction. Now, I guess now that I think about it, there were lots of ambulance fireman sounds all around. I just didn't notice that. Yeah, I guess there were firemen and fire trucks and all sorts of people running toward, and I was just seeing the people leaving. I couldn't do anything. The firemen could do that. I could do something else that they didn't have time to bother with. I could help the people that were leaving.
So how many days or weeks were you involved with this relief effort?
The relief effort was closed down at about 1 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. So it was from Tuesday to Sunday afternoon, where it grew from me and one little small table to over 200 people taking over Chelsea Piers and Spirit Lines. That transition took 3 days to be in, to go in full bore, and it kept going until they stopped us. And then I left, and there was only one guy who yelled, like at the end of Soylent Green, you know, and had to be carried away yelling. And he was actually my Spirit Lines fellow with the food. He was the food guy. He was the one guy they couldn't talk into going up and talking to a psychiatrist. They must have had 6 psychiatrists up there ready to quarantine people, maybe more. How strange. That reminds me, though, there's one fun story. That because you had to walk to get up there, you had to walk past where we had 3 places where volunteer massage people were giving massages to the firemen. And when they first did it, because a lot of the firemen and EMT people came into our place looking for stuff. They would actually walk all the way up because a lot of them didn't know that we were bringing it on the back side. So they would just walk up the West Side Highway and then walk back. And they could find something to eat, or they could find new boots, they could find buckets, they could find, they knew they could get aspirin. And we had antibiotics. We were giving away illegally antibiotics, but we figured nobody would care. And indeed, Giuliani's people did not care. And so there were these 3 people that showed up with their tables and said, we'd like to do this. We were down closer, and they just shushed us away. So can we set up here? So they set up there, and they were there for an hour and a half, just standing by their tables. And they finally came up to me and they said, we can't get any of the firemen to lay down and get a massage. And we think it's because that there's not a man there, so can you be our first man? And so I laid down, and I have never actually had a massage before in my life. And I tell you, I laid down. It was the first time really laying down. I laid down on your face, and the person took my hand and pulled my finger. It was like she pulled my finger. And it was the best feeling I'd ever felt. I couldn't believe it. My whole body relaxed. And it was, she was magic. Oh, that was great. So then I extolled her virtues to everyone who came in, and pretty soon the tables were full all the time. But you had to walk by those tables to go up to the gulag of FEMA psychiatrists. So I remember that.
That's a great story. That's good. You mentioned Soylent Green. It kind of dates you, doesn't it?
Yes, that's right.
Charlton Heston?
Yes.
What was Soylent Green made out of?
Human bodies.
Oh, that's probably done in New York City too, wasn't it?
Yes, that was supposed to be, yeah. I have no idea where they really shot it, but yeah, that's right.
I've never heard anybody mention that. Wow. I'm gonna jump ahead and maybe back. 10 years later, the 10th anniversary. How are you different today than you were 10 years ago, or are you?
Well, I think one of the main things that I'm different is that I have a severe lung problem, and I've had 6 collapses, and my lungs have blisters on the outside, and I have A1AD, which was just discovered last summer, which is actually a genetic disorder, which is causing problems to all of this. And so I now have an inhalator, and that actually several different kinds, and it's changed my life completely. I really can't cry anymore. If I cry, it takes about 5 minutes, and it feels as if I have pneumonia. The things swell up really fast, and it doesn't clean out. I discovered this actually last summer. My son's best friend was living with us at the time, who was a guitarist. My son is a singer and a bass player in a rock band. And his best friend from Wisconsin came to try to be in another band because they didn't need him, and he was a guitarist, or a classical rock guy. And he was here when that happened, and it affected him so much that he joined the Marines, which is stunning if you know any rock guys. And he's been to Iraq 3 times and has terrible stories and survived it all. So his life really changed a lot. But I have to stay calm now. I was not necessarily a calm person. I was a very intense, energetic person. Stress, the story I was saying. So my son wanted to write a song for Dan about Afghanistan, and he asked me what would be some ideas. I'm a songwriter, I've been a songwriter my whole life, and I've actually written some songs, some rock songs for Anton. And so I decided, well, I'm going to listen to some stuff so that I can hear, and I listened to Billy Joel's Goodnight Saigon, which is a masterpiece, and I started crying. And I felt shallow, but you know, when you really start weeping, you feel shallow. But to really get what was going on, I listened to it 3-4 times in a row, and started feeling like, oh, this isn't right. Something's not right. And it was as if my lung was 2 sides were a plunger, and it just went like that. And I could hardly breathe, and I thought I was going to have to call 911. And called my wife at work, and I calmed down, and it took hours to clear out. But I then realized that when I was doing something else and I cried, that this same thing started happening, and I stopped myself. So when I was actually working on my September 11th project, 10 Years Later album, that I just did this last month, organizing all of my music from then that I actually never recorded to put out. I just recorded as therapy, which we could talk about that later. But while I was working on that, it was really, really hard because it was that's when I cry. I cry when it's expressed in that way, and that was hard. So I have to keep myself from crying. I would be crying now otherwise. I have to learn how to take deep breaths. Even now with this, it's like there's a softball in my left side. I have to be careful.
Yeah, I've heard so many adjectives to describe that day, and you said there's no words. I mean, I kind of
Yes.
agree with you. Although people have tried, and I've heard some amazing descriptions of that day, and the dust, the gray, like in a post-apocalyptic thing, you know, a movie. The lights at night was like a movie set. I mean, all this. So, I mean, you're around all this. The morale. What was the morale like at that time with the workers and everybody?
You're right. The lights at night were like a movie set, and it was very surreal at night. There was no one who ever complained. No one who ever looked tired. No one who was ever short. No one honked. For months, actually, no one honked in the city. At night, sometimes after I would finish, I just would be exhausted. I still didn't want to go back to my apartment. I would go to the Union Square, and they had a vigil there, and that was fabulous. I don't describe that time in the apocalyptic sense. It was a utopia that was on the edge of an apocalypse. Everyone was so wonderful, and even when there were factions who were still had their signs about how we treat the Palestinians and all this other stuff at Union Square, everyone loved each other. Everyone knew that we were all on the same team, and they put paper out all on the ground, and people wrote things so that right next to someone might say, "Let's just nuke them." There would be something about peace and love, and it would somehow be the same message. when firefighters would go by, everyone would stop and cheer. They were the rock stars, and that's not the same anymore. And you know, those guys worked so hard. Those guys, you know, every day they put out something that I can't imagine. And the guys on the pile, every day they didn't know if it was gonna collapse and they were gonna get killed. And everybody worked so hard so that it was, you know, 6 or 9 months and the place was clear. And then it stayed clear for the next 6 months, and then the next year, and then the next year. And people started honking again. And people started not noticing the policemen and the firemen again. And people started cheering for TV stars again. And you felt like it was lost. But it's, you know, it's not all lost.
Well, that's a good point. Briefly, I mean, there's a disconnect with what happened with our society. I mean, World War II, you know, the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, and the Japanese said, we awoke the sleeping giant, you know, and we rallied, we came together. During the Korean War, the politics entered Vietnam, and then 9/11 happens, and the country, everybody puts their flag out, everybody's patriotic again. And we're far removed from that. It seems like. Maybe that's just a perception, but what do you call that? What's the word for that?
Well, I walk around knowing that it happened. So I can't really look at anybody cross-eyed. I know that if this would happen again, New York is not going to fall to looters. That the Bloods and the Crips are going to come down and help, just like everybody else. This isn't London. New York is special. This isn't Watts. New York is special. And I know that. I just know it. So that's what's different. I know it.
I think we're going to pick up a shirt that says, I love New York. Why not?
Yeah.
I'm going to get me an FDNY shirt from a fire chief.
Excellent.
I want one. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, you're living out west, it's different, a whole different lifestyle, but there's some intimidation with coming out here. But boy, when we went downtown Tuesday, I got out of the car and I stepped into another world. Stepped into another world. And I told Nancy, I said, I want to just experience this. I want to soak it in. I know it's going to be just a limited amount of time, and I want to hear the sounds of the city. So I took out my camera, and I did a lot of taping. I was taping people walking by Ground Zero, the skyline. I got a fire truck, policeman, and I'm thinking 10 years later. So I think I'll use a little bit of that as a contrast and go back 10 years ago. But the city's little kids, life's going on, and like you said, you know, there's a disconnect.
Actually, one of the first times that disconnection hit me the most was something that happens almost every day. Right outside of the MTV, Times Square MTV studios, a whole bunch of teenage girls gather, mostly teenage girls, I shouldn't say only, because there's a lot of middle-aged people and some guys too, gather to see who the Justin Bieber of the moment is going to wave at them. And they all know who's being interviewed in the studio. And they come and they wave, and then they wave back. And it takes part of the street away, and the cops rope them away, and that stopped happening. And I can remember the first time when I walked through Times Square, and there were 300 screaming girls there again, and that they were screaming towards some person that I had never heard of, and the firemen were walking by, and nobody was noticing them. And that's actually when it hit me hardest the first time. But, you know, you can't expect people to hold the abnormal with them, you know. But I just know that it's in them. So.
Yeah, there's a spirit there behind it, but
yeah.
To me, to me, it's like a fad. Our society is like a fad. We go from one movie to another, whether it's good or bad. It's what's next. We have a tragedy. We kind of hover around it, and then What's the next
Yeah.
thing?
I do want to mention one thing. What I do is write plays and write music, and I couldn't work at all, even after FEMA shut us down, and I moved to Connecticut. You couldn't open your window. I can remember when she came for the Macy Day Parade, which is 3 months later, a little more, and all the cars were covered in white dust still. And she insisted on wearing a mask, and nobody was wearing a mask anymore. But to her, who just coming in the middle of it, it was still there all around you all the time. But you started feeling claustrophobic as opposed to a place that you would feel like you were betraying if you left. And I simply couldn't work on the show, which was actually the Holocaust show I was working on. I couldn't work. Not that I couldn't work on that show. I couldn't sit down and write. I couldn't sit at the computer and write. And music has always come easier than words to me. And so I thought, all right, I will try to write what I'm feeling. And I wrote 3 songs right away in a week. And the first one was "I Will Love," and it's a pledge. I will love, and that's all I could think of.
Is that on one of the CDs?
It's actually the 4th track.
On the
You know, on my September 11th CD. I always wanted it to be the first track. But the 3rd song that I did was actually about the relief effort, and it's an upbeat, gospel-ish kind of R&B tune, and then has lots of layers, and it gets very chaotic, just like what really happened. And when I heard that, that's actually what I've retained. So if I would have put the album out 9 years ago, I would have ordered it differently. But I ordered it this way. So the first song is the most upbeat song, because that's actually what I carry with me, is that aspect of. And the last song is where I crumple it up and throw it all away, all of my notes and everything else. It's at once I have to stop watching CNN, worrying about the next disaster. That a disaster can happen now and I don't have to turn on CNN. I can survive in my littler world, a world littler than it used to be. But it's a happy world.
Can I ask your spiritual beliefs? I mean, during this time, the chaos, the death, I mean, that changed your life, your perspective of life and death, and are you a spiritual man, a religious man?
No, it didn't change that at all. I've had too many moving experiences prior to this. Sorry, my voice is tiring. What it did for me was to affirm people. It didn't speak to me of ghosts, of another world. It spoke to me that people rise up and are walking angels, and they are all the time. Angels in gas masks. Yeah.
I'd like to see a picture of that. That would be a good cover picture. 2 more questions can I ask you?
Yes.
Freedom. Think about freedom for a second. I'm going to ask you about what freedom means to you. The price of freedom. You know, we have troops serving our country, half served our country. What does freedom mean to you, Tobin?
Well, putting in context of that time, I'll do that first. When we were discussing, when we would stand around and look at this hole in the skyline, I used to come out of the subway every day and reorient myself, because I would almost always come out and want to turn the wrong direction. It just would happen. And it's not there. There were times when I would find myself standing on 6th Avenue, looking down or 8th Avenue especially, looking down, crossing the street, and forgetting I'm not walking anymore because there's nothing there. And I would see that in other people too. But we would talk about what should they rebuild. They should rebuild as fast as possible. And a lot of my young rocker friends would, wanted 3 towers, one that was taller than the other, and say, go ahead, come and get us. But then I would talk to some people who still worked in a tall building, and they would say, I really don't even like to go to work in this tall building. I don't know who's even going to want to work in the tall building again. But I'm really glad that they named it Freedom Tower. I really think that that's great. My father was a World War II vet, and I know that I could never understand what he went through and what it was like, and to be gone for 2.5 years. He was in the Navy, living on this ship and doing all the things in the South Pacific that in many ways was more horrific in its own way, things that happened. And I know that it's difficult, but as a political animal, I've often thought of freedom in intellectual terms. What did Thomas Jefferson read and what was his life experience to understand what he needed to understand to come up with the Declaration of Independence? What did those guys go through, almost all who lost everything, to build a dream that we're still trying to make sense out of, that we're still arguing over? And when we stop arguing, that's when I will be worried. When we stop feeling impassioned about our own sliver of what we think freedom is. And I don't care if freedom is this really self-centered kind of angry, I'm going to live my own life, or blind, I'm going to live my own life, or if it's this huge altruistic, we have to be free so that we can all be together. Everybody's this sliver of what this is. We have this spirit here that we can't lose. We're this unusual thing. And if we lose it, there's not going to be another country discovered that can be populated from not the ground up, but from some large space that we can fill up with our dreams. It's not going to happen anymore. The world's too crowded. We have to keep that dream alive from the people who felt that space and that freedom of doing what we think is best. Freedom is just a tool, but we have to have that so that we can do what we think is best.
Tell me about the American flag, what it means and represents to you.
About 3 weeks after 9/11, my father founded the Paper Hall of Fame in Appleton, Wisconsin. Wisconsin makes more paper than any other place in the country. And all the people that founded the paper industry are honored, and they have new people inducted every year. And he asked me to come to sing God Bless America, which was about 3 weeks after 9/11. So it was only about a week after they were flying flights through Chicago and out of LA to get there. And I never actually, on Flag Day, I put a libertarian flag out. I didn't put the Stars and Stripes out. I put a flag with the Statue of Liberty out. Although I always had my father put his out. And so now there's a flag right behind me, and I'm standing in front of these people, and I'm the closest that they're going to get to Ground Zero, and saying, God Bless America. And I understand a little, I always understood from my father's eyes, through my father's eyes, what it meant. But it also had this, living through the 60s, don't treat it wrong part that always bugged me a little. And don't treat it wrong. And I got that.
Is there anything that maybe you preparing for this interview that you thought I might ask you that I didn't, or is there anything that you'd like to say that maybe I didn't ask you? We've just got maybe 2 or 3 minutes, but otherwise I think you covered it really well. You got everything I wanted, so. With the magic of editing, it's gonna be awesome.
It was wonderful. I talked in a lot of classrooms about what happened, about my own unusual take, because my take has nothing to do with lives lost. It had this wonderful peripheral freedom to it that in many ways is more applicable to real life. And so I really enjoyed going in and talking to young people about it and hearing their questions. And they would often ask, even then, specific questions. Did the fireman cry? You know, I know that the Time magazine in its first thing came out with a fireman going like this, and I just tell you, I never once saw it, never once.
That sounds like a 5th grade question. Those kids will ask good questions, the younger ones.
But that was a good question. You know, because they wanted to know.